Today we are going to discuss the solution to the Civil Services Preliminary Examination General Studies Paper 1, which was conducted on 23rd of August 2015. Before we go to the exact questions, let us discuss how was pattern this year, the subjects and the number of questions they yielded in this examination. So this year was a surprise in the sense that current affairs is the most productive subject in the paper. 17 questions out of 100 came from current affairs, most of them very simple, and others of course were on the expected lines, except for art and culture, where there were just 3 questions. Geography plus environment and biodiversity together yielded around 22 questions, which is again a scale back from the last year. And we are seeing, at least in the last 2 years, a shift towards world affairs, world matters. So international relations or international affairs yielded 7 questions. Even world geography had 6 questions in this year. So overall, this is the subject wise breakup, as you can see on the screen. In economics was on the expected lines. The kind of questions you expect from economics, the number of questions you expect from economics, they were there. So let's discuss how was the nature of questions. Difficulty level this year was, as everyone who has written this test would agree, and everyone who has also written the test last year would agree, it was easier than the last year. And one thing which continues from the last year is the presence of factual questions. There were too many factual questions this year, and I think now we are seeing a trend. After 2 years we can see a trend towards factual questions, something which the UPSC had stopped giving at least till 2-3 years ago. Now, however, even though questions were factual, as I will prove during this presentation, a rational candidate would have been able to successfully guess many answers, even without prior information, even without sufficient prior information about the topic being asked in the question. So that is something I liked in this paper. You could have eliminated and come to the exact right answer throughout this paper, in spite of having limited information on the topic. As I have said, this paper is heavily skewed towards current affairs. I would feel this paper is indicating to everyone that if you are someone who is in a habit of reading news, following news regularly, you don't even have to try too hard to get these questions right. You would have been happy to see the questions. Probably if you had prepared a lot, you would have been disappointed to see the kind of questions which had been asked. Questions like Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana or Niti Aayog or swine flu. These questions are something which we expect to be asked at not asked at Civil Services Preliminary Examination level. Now, very simple questions from current affairs and polity, standard questions, or maybe even below standard questions in a few cases. We would say the ideal number of attempts in this paper would have been 85. And a good score in this paper should have been 110 plus. If you have written the paper and you are getting more than 110, it is a commendable job. Now, regarding cutoff, it's difficult to predict cutoff. Now, let me give this disclaimer before I come to the cutoff. But we can actually come to the cutoff by having this theory that whatever would have been a good score the last year should be the cutoff for this year. That is 1. 2. We should not discount the presence of paper 2, which is qualifying. Still, there will be many candidates who would miss out on the cutoff on paper 2 in spite of doing well in paper 1, because this year's CSAT paper was tougher than the last year. The passages were more complicated, in fact most of the questions were inference based, the quantitative side calculations. So there might be a significant chunk who would miss out on qualifying in paper 2. So I would feel the cutoff should be 100 plus minus 3 for general category, and then you can subsequently adjust for reservation. So 95 plus minus 3 for OBC, 75 plus minus 3 for SC, and 70 plus minus 3 for ST. This is what we expect to be the cutoff for this paper. Even though questions were easy, we have come across a lot of candidates who have made a lot of blunders, which will keep haunting them for the coming 1 or 2 months. So having set aside the cutoff, let's come directly to the question. I am following series B, the test paper series B. The first question is on BirdLife International. Now, BirdLife International. So, this is the kind of question where you need to read the options, read the statements, look at the option, identify one statement which you think is definitely correct, maybe one statement which is definitely incorrect, and then you go to the options and eliminate. Right. So, for BirdLife International, the answer to this question, good at identifying statements and correlating them with whatever you have read, you would have come down to two choices here, option C and option D, which means you would be sure about 1 and 3. The only doubt would be regarding statement 2. The answer in this case is D, 1, 2 and 3 only. Now, statement 2, if you go to the Wikipedia page of biodiversity hotspot, you would find the name of Norman Myers as the person who coined this term. You would not find BirdLife International being mentioned in that page. However, if you try to read Norman Myers' paper, the seminal paper which he wrote, and he advocated this, he has given credit to organizations such as BirdLife International, which he believed are already doing what he is recommending in the paper. Also, the question is asking for an organization. If there has to be any organization which is to be given credit for this, it has to be BirdLife International. If you go to the wiki page, if you are going to the wiki page, you will find, as you can see on the screen, you will find these organizations to be involved in biodiversity hotspots, and BirdLife International is clearly there, and the page says endemic bird areas by BirdLife International is a kind of biodiversity hotspot. Now, endemic bird areas were initiated by BirdLife International in 1987, a few years before hotspots became a part of global jargon, even before Norman Myers had written his paper. So, clearly endemic bird areas which are now biodiversity hotspots were present before biodiversity hotspots came into global recognition, and therefore, statement 2 is also correct. So, the answer would be D, 1, 2 and 3. Second question would be really easy for anyone who is even casually interested in world geography, especially because it comes from a region which should be an object of constant study for you, considering its relevance for international relations, the world in general, or even India's relation with these countries and the continuing crisis in this region. So, which of these countries do not open out to the Mediterranean Sea, which means do not share a shoreline with Mediterranean Sea? The answer in this case, most people could zero down to Jordan and Lebanon. The answer here is Jordan. Jordan does not open out to Mediterranean Sea. Jordan, as you can see on the map, Jordan has just a very small access to Red Sea, very limited access to 26-mile access to shoreline with Red Sea. Otherwise, it would have been a completely landlocked country. Let's go to the next question. A standard question from geography. If you have read your NCERTs well, you would have been happy to see this question. Teak is the dominant tree species of which of the following types of forests? The answer is straightforward, no doubt at all. Tropical moist deciduous forest. Class 9 NCERT, chapter 5. You would find this mentioned there, and this would be an easy question because we are not talking about just any of the trees in tropical moist deciduous forest. We are talking about the most dominant. Teak would directly come to your mind if you are well prepared with NCERT for geography. Question 4, Beijing Declaration and platform for action. I would say an extremely simple question. If you are prepared for, let's say, women empowerment across the world, even if you have prepared notes or read notes on women empowerment across the world, you would know that this comes right at the top, right? When you have to mention facts, you would say this is what the world could do the best towards women empowerment. The collective will of the world towards women empowerment is represented through Beijing Declaration and platform for action. And the reason why this question has been asked is this is the 20th year of the declaration of Beijing, from Beijing, and that's why it has been asked. The answer is clearly C. Question 5, again it's a similar question had been asked the last year. So, instead of outlining the characteristics, one quote is given and you have to identify which climate is represented by this quote. In this case, so each day is more or less the same. Morning is clear and bright with a sea breeze. Sun climbs high in the sky, heat mounts up, dark clouds form, then rain comes suddenly and the rain is over soon. You would be able to understand that we are talking about equatorial climate, an easy question from geography. Now this question is interesting. With reference to Indian economy, we have to consider these two statements. Statement 1, and this is where most people got it wrong. Statement 1 talks about rate of growth, and statement 2 talks about the actual GDP, not the rate of growth. Statement 1 talks about rate of growth of real GDP. Statement 2 talks about GDP at market price. So we should be clear about these two, about the differences in these two statements. Now, what is meant by real GDP? Whenever you attach the adjective real to anything in economics, it simply means you are discounting inflation. You are reducing inflation from whatever be the rate at which you have arrived at. So if we are talking about real GDP growth rate, it would mean nominal GDP growth rate minus inflation. Now it says has steadily increased in the last decade. So you just have to ask, has India been witnessing high inflation in any of the last many years, at least in the last decade? And you would understand that India was witnessing extremely high inflation. CPI based inflation was more than 10% for at least a couple of years, giving the RBI and the government a lot of headache. And our GDP, nominal GDP growth rate was slowing down. So obviously if the GDP growth rate was slowing down, inflation was going up, real GDP growth rate could not have been steadily increasing in the last decade. So statement 1 is wrong. Now statement 2 is GDP at market prices. Simply GDP at market price, which would mean P into Q, price into quantity as it is right now. Sum of all that is what is being talked about. So you just have to ask, has India's GDP ever fallen? You would know no, right? India has witnessed a slowdown, but every time something has been added to the GDP. Even if the GDP growth rate came down from 9% to 5% or 6%, still 5 or 6% were being added. So it has been increasing steadily in the last decade. Statement 2 is correct. The answer to this will be option B. Right? Answer to this is option B. Real GDP has growth rate has been coming down, and GDP at market price has been going up in the last decade. Right? And you can look at the chart which proves the point. Statement 7. Now it is a very interesting question. Of course, the actual answer will depend on what they were thinking when they were framing the question. However, we will go by the rules of the of reading comprehension to answer this question. Right? So Legislative Council of a state in India can be larger in size than half of the Legislative Assembly of that particular state is the question. Now as soon as you read this question statement, what will flash in your mind is that the limit is 1/3. The limit is Legislative Council cannot be larger than 1/3 of Legislative Assembly of a state, right? But if you read that article 171 completely, the statement does not get over there. It goes on to say, provided that the total number of members in Legislative Council in any state shall in no case be less than 40, which means we are talking about this function. The function is 1/3 or 40, whichever is more. Now if you look at the northeast states, for example, if you take Sikkim has just 32 members in Legislative Assembly, Arunachal has just 60 members. So if they come up with a Legislative Council, they will have to have at least 40, right? So in these cases, the ratio will be actually much greater than half. And statement 1 says can be larger in size, which means theoretically it can be larger in size. So we can safely conclude theoretically it can be larger in size. Therefore, statement 1 is correct. Now regarding statement 2, it's clearly incorrect. Governor of a state nominates the chairman of Legislative Council of that particular state. You just have to ask, if the governor had this power, then this would have been in news. This would have been one of the discretionary powers of the governor. Right? We don't find this mentioned anywhere in the discretionary powers of the governor. And if this were true, no state would be passing a resolution to have their own Legislative Council, because they know the head will be appointed by the governor, who is of course an appointee of the central government. Right? So 2 is clearly wrong. 1 is correct. Therefore, the answer is A. Now, one of the easiest questions, right? To uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India. What is it? Preamble, directive principle, fundamental right, fundamental duties. In your NCERT books, you find this mentioned at the back cover, your fundamental duties. This is clearly a fundamental duty. Even if you had an element of doubt in your mind whether it is preamble or fundamental duty, you just had to ask, what does it read like? To uphold and protect. Does it sound like a duty, or does it sound like it has been written in the preamble of the Constitution? And you would conclude this is in the nature of duty. So therefore, you could have come to the answer straight away. This is fundamental duty, Article 51A C. Right. So now we come to the 9th question, definition of ecosystem. Now here you don't need to remember the definition of ecosystem, you just need to read whatever has been given in the options. Right. So if you read statement A, a community of organisms interacting with one another, you don't reject it, you read the next one, part of earth which is inhabited by living organisms, right, which would mean that we are talking about just one ecosystem throughout, and there is no ecosystem outside where there is no living organism. You can reject B, you can come to C, community of organisms together with the environment in which they live. Right, between A and C you would pick up C, because you understand that ecosystem covers everything, not just living beings but also the non-living beings. We even talk about the kind of intellectual ecosystem, right? Even if you remember things like these, you do understand that we just don't talk about living beings, we also talk about the environment in which they live, right? So the answer here will be C. Of course, D, flora and fauna of a geographical area, would mean that only flora and fauna and nothing else is a part. It is similar to the other options and we can reject it. The answer here will be C. Now, fundamental object of Panchayati Raj, right? Now, how do you answer these questions? 1 says people's participation in development, 2 is political accountability, 3 is democratic decentralization, and 4 is financial mobilization. You need to, in these questions, how do you answer them? You need to find out 1 or 2 about which you are definitely sure. Right, so you will be sure about 1, people's participation in development. You will also be sure about 3, democratic decentralization. Right. So you know the answer has to include 1 and 3, which means you can reject option B. Now you have to read statements 2 and 4. 2 is political accountability and 4 is financial mobilization. Now maybe if you're not sure about political accountability, you have to ask whether financial mobilization is possible through Panchayati Raj system, which means can the panchayats be empowered to collect taxes at their own level, right? Or are they able to mobilize, are we collectively able to mobilize better resources, more resources because of the presence of Panchayati Raj system? The answer is definitely yes, which means 4th is also correct. So 1, 3 and 4 are correct. Now political accountability, there is some element of doubt on this. The point is, it is also a fundamental object of Panchayati Raj system. It's not that the panchayats did not exist before the 73rd amendment, just that the 73rd amendment ensured there is some level of accountability. Basically the rules of the game are defined now. Therefore political accountability is also an objective of Panchayati Raj system, and the answer here should be 1, 2, 3 and 4. Right. So the links are mentioned here, you can go to these. There are too many reports by the Planning Commission where they discuss that financial mobilization opportunities available through Panchayati Raj system have not been appropriately utilized by the states. They need to empower the panchayats more in order to make the 73rd amendment successful. Therefore the answer is D, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Next we come to one of the easiest questions on Indian economy. All you need to know for this question is whether each of these is a part of monetary policy or fiscal policy. Right? All you need to ask is which of these is done by the RBI. Right? That would fall in the domain of monetary policy. right? So you obviously know bank rate is a part of monetary policy. Now, open market operations, right, buying and selling of bonds, auctions of bonds, regularly done by the RBI. So you are sure about 1 and 2. Now, see, even look at the options. Even if you are not sure about 3 and 4, although if you are even modestly good in economics, you would be sure. Even if you are not sure and you are sure about 1 and 2, just look at the options. There is only one option which gives 1 and 2 together, which is option C. That should be the answer. Right, so you can easily pick up the answer by elimination. Also, if you understand this, public debt and public revenue are part of fiscal policy, not of monetary policy. Again, an easy question from economics. Every year there is one question which talks about inflation and its correlation with money supply or interest or taxation. This is a standard pattern, because probably this is something which every aspirant should be able to gauge by a daily reading of newspaper, right. So in this case they are asking, with reference to inflation, which of the following statements is correct? One says controlling the inflation is the responsibility of the government of India only. Now again, see, if you understand the rules of comprehension, you should always be wary, you should always be apprehensive of extreme options. Whenever you find only or not only, the adjectives like these or adverbs like these attached to a statement, most likely these are wrong options. Most likely, as I will prove in the coming questions also, these are always, at least in this year, these were always the wrong options, right. So it is not the responsibility of the government of India only. Had only not been there, this would have been a correct statement, because government of India also has some responsibility for controlling inflation, at least on the supply side. Now option B is RBI has no role in controlling inflation, right. Now what is the understanding right now between the RBI and the government of India? That first priority is inflation. First priority is inflation. Inflation has to be between 4 plus minus 2%, which means between 2 and 6%. That is the understanding. Decreased money circulation helps in controlling the inflation, and you know this is the answer. If money circulation comes down, demand should come down. If demand comes down, price should come down gradually, right. So clearly C is correct. D says increased money circulation helps in controlling the inflation. Again, one smart way to answer question is, if you read C and D, right, you understand, even if you know nothing about it, answer has to be C or D, because one says decreased money circulation, the other says increased money circulation. Of course, one of this has to control inflation. Even if you had absolutely no idea, you would have come down to choosing between C and D. Answer is clearly C. Now, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT. This question asked, which of the above are recognized as nuclear weapon states? Right? It's not that which of these have nuclear weapons, but which of the following are recognized as nuclear weapon states by the NPT. And India is also present here. You just have to ask, has India signed NPT? Yourself, you have to ask yourself, of course. So India has not signed NPT. Why has India not signed NPT? Because India thinks it's an unfair, unequal system, where there are certain states which have been designated as nuclear weapon states, which are exempted from the controls which are put on the non-nuclear weapon states. India has always been advocating or as asking for being recognized as a nuclear weapon state, and the developed countries have been refraining from addressing India as a nuclear weapon state. In 2010, when Barack Obama had visited India, he had casually mentioned India as a nuclear weapon state, and there was celebration all across that the US is recognizing, and of course after that he did not ever mention India as a nuclear weapon state. So India is not a part of this, right. You also understand Pakistan is not recognized as a nuclear weapon state, right. And what's Pakistan's logic? Pakistan's logic is India is not a nuclear, India has not signed NPT, we will not sign NPT, that kind of stupid logic. But in any case, India and Pakistan are not. If you know that, you should be able to come to the answer. The answer in this actually is a very simple question, right. Who are the nuclear weapon states? The permanent 5, the P5 of UNSC, they have been recognized by NPT as nuclear weapon states. So, China, France, Russia, United Kingdom and United States, only these 5 countries are recognized as nuclear weapon states, which means the answer is 1, option A, 1 and 2 only. One of the easiest questions. Question 14, the idea of welfare state in the Indian constitution is enshrined in, right. As soon as you read, you do not even need to go to the option. Answer obviously has to be directive principles of state policy, because the first statement which you will write in favor of DPSP is that it helps us achieve the ideals of welfare state by ensuring socio-economic justice in India. Right. There is one more question asked with regards to DPSP, which is about criticism, and the biggest criticism is that it is not enforceable in any court of law in India. In this case, answer is DPSP. Now, a question which you can answer logically. The substitution of steel for wooden plows in agricultural production is an example of, right. So, you need to ask yourself, if you use more steel plows than wooden plows, will you be creating jobs or will you be eliminating jobs? What will it do to efficiency? It will increase efficiency. Now, using steel, it will lead to loss of jobs. Always in technological progress, there is a conflict between capital and labor, right. So, this is pro capital, using steel is pro capital, it would be reducing labor, right. So, this would be capital augmenting and labor reducing, and therefore, the answer will be B. Like I said before, if you read the options, read option B and option C. One of them says capital augmenting technological process, the other one says capital reducing technological progress. Obviously, answer has to be either of these. Answer has to be capital augmenting or capital reducing, and if you follow some logic, you will understand the answer is capital augmenting technological progress, right. In the presentation, you will find certain technical terms mentioned. I think you can pause and read them. Maybe as we are seeing consistency between years, at least in 2014-15, you can expect another question related to technological change next year. It is good if you visit the Wikipedia page. There is a parliamentary system of government in India. Now, again, like I said before, this many of the questions here are designed for the average Indian, someone who understands the polity, history and geography of India. Maybe not so much history, because history had a few complicated problems, but surely polity and economy of India would be there. Parliamentary system of governance, standard bread and butter question from polity, right. What is a parliamentary system of government? Where the executive is responsible to the legislature, and in this case, obviously, Council of Ministers is responsible to the Lok Sabha. The answer is D. Question 17, those who were writing would have been smiling to get this question, and the only reason they could have got this wrong would have been to just ask themselves, why would UPSC ask such an easy question, and then they would have probably marked the wrong answer. The answer H1N1 is swine flu. So, this absolutely this is absolutely one of the easiest questions here. Now, this question is about bio toilets. This question is here because in September 2014, Indian Railways launched their first train which had all the toilets of which were bio toilets. So, this question came as a result of that. One would be easy to answer. It says decomposition of human waste in the bio toilets is initiated by a fungal inoculum, right. So, you have to ask if it is the bacteria, if it is fungal decomposition or it is bacterial decomposition, and in bio toilets mostly you will find anaerobic bacterial decomposition process being followed. It is not fungal. So, you could have rejected statement 1 straight away. Now, statement 2, again I would say the same trick. What does it say? Ammonia and water vapor are the only end products in this decomposition which are released into the atmosphere. Now, one thing is which I would like to, this is my theory. See, these statements are taken from standard literature. What happens? How do they prepare question? You need to get into the mindset of those who prepare questions. They take statements, they split into statements 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And if they have to make a statement wrong, they will add certain things here and there, right? Now, if let's say if ammonia and water vapor were the only, actually they were the only end products, what would the literature read? It would say ammonia and water vapor are the end products in this decomposition. It would not say they are the only end products. Clearly someone has added only here, right, making it an extreme choice. And you could have this, if you had followed this logic, which I always recommend in my classes, then you would have come to the conclusion that statement 2 is also wrong. The answer is neither 1 nor 2. Both of them are incorrect statements. Again, an easy question from economics. International liquidity. Forget international liquidity. Even if you know what is liquidity, right? What is liquidity? The money in your pocket right now, that is a liquidity. Or maybe in your house, wherever you are sitting, how much can you manage straight away? That is liquidity. So if we talk about international liquidity, you do understand it has to do with cash. So international liquidity has to do with dollars and other hard currencies. It has to do with currencies. Right? That is, currency is the most liquid form of asset. Answer is clearly, so there is a problem with international liquidity. It has to do with dollars or other international currencies. Answer is C. Now again, fuel cells. This is from science and technology. Fuel cells, I would say a standard question, you need to understand fuel cells. Probably you should be even able to draw the diagram how the fuel cells function. If you don't know, or if you remotely are able to recall, you should be able to come and logically attempt this question. One says if pure hydrogen is used as fuel, the fuel cell emits heat and water as byproducts. Heat and water as byproducts. Basic chemistry, if you know this is happening, right, heat will emerge and H2O will come out. It doesn't even say only. Had it been saying only, maybe you would not have been sure, right? But you know that this is what will happen. As heat will come out, H2O will come out. So one seems to be correct. Now look at statement 2. Fuel cells can be used for powering building and not for small devices like laptop computers. Now these are the kind of statements, like I am saying, you should be very apprehensive about. If you read on fuel cell, do you actually think anywhere they would write it like this, that fuel cells can be used for building and not for small devices like laptop computers? That is one. 2, if it can be used for powering building, it doesn't even define large building or huge apartments, apartment setups. It just says building. It can be a small building. If it can power a small building, it can also be made compact enough to power a laptop computer. Right? On these lines, you can reject statement 2. Right? And statement 3 is an easy one. It's not alternating, it's not AC, it is DC. If you are talking about fuel cell, the answer here will be 1 only, statement A. Kalamkari painting, there was an article in the Hindu a couple of months back related to Kalamkari painting. In any case, the part of the standard preparation, bare minimum preparation, paintings, where they come from, what do they represent, right? Every year you will find one question related to this, or folk dances. Bare minimum work, even if you do that, you should be able to answer this question. The answer is A, South India. Right now it is mostly being done in Andhra Pradesh. Right? And many people got it wrong because they tried to guess Kalamkari. It sounds like a North Indian Persian kind of name, therefore maybe we are talking about northwestern India. But I think in these cases you are only to be blamed if you did not even get into paintings of India and where they come from. So Kalamkari painting, South India. The seed village concept, now it talks about seed replacement rate. Right? It is to do with, so there is something called seed replacement rate. If you read the economic survey, they would be disappointed, or even if you follow articles on Indian agriculture, one thing which is plaguing Indian agriculture is the fact that the farmers use the seeds which they save from the past harvest, which they have saved from the past harvest in the current year, and they keep on doing this continuously. What it does is it impacts the quality of the crop, because over generation the quality keeps on falling. Therefore, the seed replacement rate in India should be increased, and this is something which is with regards to that. So we need to increase quality seed production in India in our villages. Right? Our seed replacement rate right now is 15%. which means out of 100 seats, only 15 seats are replaced by better quality seats in the next year. It's a big problem, right? If you were aware of this, you could have answered this question, right? Therefore, the answer is B, right? And you can pause the screen and you can read the comments. I am moving slightly fast. We have 100 questions to cover. You can always pause the screen and read the details in the solution. 23 is a standard question, basic question, logical question from economics, right? Deficit is high, persistent deficit budget. Deficit is going high. And what is deficit? Deficit is expenditure minus revenue. Expenditure minus revenue is going high. If you have to decrease this deficit, what do you need to do? Either you reduce expenditure, or you increase revenue, or do both, right? Even before you read statements 1, 2, 3 and 4, this should come to your mind. Now you read the statements and take a call. Statement 1 simply says reducing revenue expenditure. So it is about reducing expenditure. Straight away you select this, reducing revenue expenditure. Statement 2 says introducing new welfare schemes. If the government is introducing new welfare schemes, is it going to increase expenditure or reduce expenditure? Obviously it is going to increase expenditure. Therefore, you are rejecting 2 straight away. So 1 is selected, 2 is not. Rationalizing subsidies is 3. What does rationalizing mean? A frequently used phrase by the finance minister, by the government, and euphemism for reducing subsidies. What does rationalizing mean? Reducing the subsidies and targeting them better. So we are talking about reduction in subsidies, which is a reduction in expenditure. So we will also select 3. What about 4? Even though you do not have any answer option called 1, 3 and 4. But even if you look at 4, expanding industries means more investment, it means more expenditure. So the only way we can reduce is by, out of these 4, is by using 1 and 3. Therefore the correct option is A, 1 and 3 only. Now geographical indication. In this case, Tirupati Laddu was in news. So Tirupati Laddu most people would have been very sure about. Banaras, the saris from the Banarsi saris, right? They also have geographical indication. The only doubt here should have been, which I would say is a very creative option statement given by UPSC, Rajasthani dal bati churma. So you need to take a call, although it may seem like, and you may feel dal bati churma deserves geographical indication, right? You needed to ask yourself, if it had geographical indication, you would have heard this in news, you would have read it somewhere. Again, now one advantage, and I must tell this, which someone who is reading newspaper regularly, is that that person will always be confident that I have not read this in news. If you are not reading the newspaper regularly, you will not be confident. You would probably think that maybe this was given geographical indication and I had not read about it because I have not been regular with newspapers, right? Here in this case, the answer is 1 and 3 only. Banarsi saris and Tirupati Laddu, they have got geographical indication. Dal bati churma has not. Now the question on IREDA, Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency. Even though we should know about this agency, the question is slightly surprising, or I may say disappointing. You need to get into legality of the structure of this agency, not even what it does, right? So it's asking whether it is a public limited company, government company, and or it is a non-banking financial company, NBFC, right? So in this case, these are the questions you better don't attempt unless you have bothered to read the About Us page of IREDA and you also remember what did it actually say. So answer in this case would be both 1 and 2. It's a public limited company which is also an NBFC. It was accorded Mini Ratna status a few months ago. I would say the most surprising question here is Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. Although we expect every year there will be one question on financial inclusion, about the logic behind financial inclusion, but we could have never imagined that the question would be as straightforward as what does Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana relate to, what is it for, right? You don't even need to read the other options. You just need to find where you have financial inclusion. Right? So option C, financial inclusion. 14th Finance Commission. Again, expected questions. So this year there have been areas from where we expected questions and which have yielded questions. So for this was statement 1 was everywhere. Someone who was reading newspaper even casually would have read this many times, that central divisible pool has been increased from 32% to 42%. The only challenge here was to look into statement 2, which is sector specific grants. Right? I always recommend, it is the first duty for any civil service aspirant, and it also makes sense in terms of results which you get out of it, is to read the Economic Survey of India. Do not worry whether it will lead to questions or not, because two things will happen if you read the Economic Survey of India completely. One is your understanding of Indian economy will develop to an extent where you should be able to logically come to the answers for every question on economy, and I am not saying most, every question on economy. And two is, you will also find statements directly taken from the Economic Survey and being asked. Now 14th Finance Commission in Economic Survey of India for 2014-15, which was released in February, is chapter number 10. It is such an important chapter that I can promise you, even in mains 2015, there will be one question at least which will come from that chapter. Right? So if you had read it, you would know that unlike 13th Finance Commission, it's clearly written there, 14th Finance Commission has not made any sector specific grants. The answer is A, one only, and as you can see on the screen, the screenshot is from the Economic Survey, chapter 10. It's clearly, as you can see, it says it has not made any recommendation concerning sector specific grants. A chapter, if you had not read earlier, if you have not read so far, you must read, and I would say even by heart this chapter. Fortaleza declaration, standard question, not even standard, below standard question, something which you expect to be asked in a bank PO examination, right? So it was in news. So these type of questions recently in the news, sometimes in the news, which used to be asked earlier, I have now made a comeback. So Fortaleza declaration related to the affairs of BRICS, right? Fortaleza is in Brazil. If you were reading news around that time, you would have been bored of reading on Fortaleza, and you would have actually even gone to Wikipedia page to find out where exactly is Fortaleza and what is it known for. The question is very simple, what was happening in Fortaleza. 29th question, very interesting question on economics. If tax to GDP ratio is coming down, what does it indicate? Right? There's a lot of controversy about this question, but I am sure what I am going to say till right now will make sense to you. And what I am going to say is, statement 1 you can answer mathematically. So if tax by GDP, let's say T by G is coming down, does it necessarily indicate that G is coming down? Right? Does it? Denominator coming down, will it reduce tax to GDP ratio? No, right? So there are many ways in which tax to GDP ratio can come down. One, let's say T goes down, G remains the same, then it can come down. Two is T remains the same and G grows, G is growing at a good rate, then also T by G will come down, or both will happen, it will come down. And most likely when what happens in countries is, when does it come down? When tax collection is growing, GDP is also growing, but the rate of growth of T is less than the rate of growth of G. In that case, the ratio will come down, right? For example, if you say 10% is the growth rate, is the GDP growth rate, and 5% is the growth in tax. So if you start with T by G, what you will get will be 1.05 T divided by 1.1 G, right, which will be less than T by G. Right, so statement 1 is clearly incorrect. Statement 2 is less equitable distribution of national income. You have to ask, what is the purpose of taxation? Right, so if tax collection is growing at a rate which is slower than the rate of growth of GDP, what does it mean? It means the center, the government is taking away less as people are earning more, as in the form of tax. and the primary purpose of tax is to ensure redistribution. Right? So in a way, if this is happening, it indicates rich are getting richer and poor are getting poorer. Right? So therefore, statement 2 is correct, and answer here should be B, 2 only. Right? So statement question 30. Now this is slightly tricky because you would find at least 3 options which you cannot immediately reject. South Atlantic and Southeastern Pacific regions, cyclones do not originate there. What is the reason for this? Now to answer this, before even you look at the option, you should ask what are the ideal conditions for the development of cyclone. Clearly, if the ideal conditions are not met, cyclones won't happen, right? And the first condition for the formation of cyclone is that the temperature, sea temperature should be in a particular range, 26 to 29 degrees Celsius, around that range, only then cyclones will be formed. So if sea surface temperatures are lower than that, cyclones just won't originate there. And this is the answer to the question. The sea surface temperatures are low, which means the primary condition is not fulfilled, and therefore cyclones will not originate in these 2 regions. Question 31, again a candidate for the easiest question. A question, if you don't answer correctly, you should go and bang your head against the wall. And I think only China would disagree with the correct answer choice, because China would claim Arunachal Pradesh to be a part of China. For everyone in India, there should be no doubt the answer in this case, which means easternmost and westernmost state, are Arunachal Pradesh and Gujarat. Right? You find a few other points being highlighted here. As I have told you, the trend is towards factual question. The trend is in UPSC's prelims is towards let's say making it like a quiz contest at a school level, those kind of questions. Therefore, for the next year you should find out all the facts about India. Easy question on, like I told before, DPSP, they come back again. So what are the which of these statements are true with regards to DPSP? Statement 1 says they spell out the socio-economic democracy in the country. Right? Do you remember the previous question? Which of these capture the ideal of a welfare state? The same thing is mentioned here, socio-economic democracy in the country. Clearly it is correct. Statement 2 says they are not enforceable by any court. Standard question from polity. 1 is the biggest point in favor of DPSP, the biggest point in favor of DPSP. 2 is the biggest criticism. That was the point in having these socio-economic principles or guidelines, when someone cannot go to a court of law in India and say that I am entitled to this socio-economic measure, however the government is not implementing. Right? Part 4 of the constitution is not enforceable by the court. Therefore, the trend is in India right now is to have movements, put pressure on the government so that the government can move these principles from part 4 to part 3. Right? Something which has happened in the case of primary education in the form of Right to Education Act, an amendment done to the constitution. Answer is clearly C, both 1 as well as 2. Index of 8 core industries, you find this frequently in news. Still I would say this is not an easy question to answer, because you wouldn't be memorizing all these, what percentage is allocated to each of these industries. Right? Most likely you will be familiar with IIP, Index of Industrial Production, and you would know 75% weightage to manufacturing, 10% weightage to electricity, and 15% weightage to mining. That you may remember, but in 8 core industries, what? So I won't say it's an easy question, but something which is frequently in news. The answer here is B. Electricity has the highest weightage in this index of 8 core industries, followed by steel, then coal, and then fertilizer of the given options. National park, again a standard part of your preparation is to know about national parks, the species they support, the flora and fauna, where they are found anything else with regards to national park, you need to be an authority on national parks in India. So this question is easy. It's talking about a national park which is a swamp with floating vegetation, right? So I think if you had read about this even once, you would be able to remember or recall that the answer is B, Kibul Lamjao National Park, which is in Manipur. Not only in India, this is the only floating national park in the world, right? And this is frequently in news. National Innovation Foundation, right? The next question is about National Innovation Foundation, and you may not be banging your head against the desk on which you are sitting while writing this exam that why would this be asked. You need to be brave enough to read the options and then eliminate the statements if you can. First statement says it is an autonomous body of the Department of Science and Technology under the central government. You may safely conclude that if there has to be one department which is overseeing National Innovation Foundation, it has to be Department of Science and Technology, and you can select this, which actually is true. Now the challenge would have been to read statement 2 and understand whether it is correct or not. Now read statement 2. Look at the language which is being used here. It is an initiative to strengthen the highly advanced scientific research in India's premier scientific institutions in collaboration with highly advanced foreign scientific institution. Now, like I said, all these statements come from standard literature, most likely from the about us pages of these institutions, agencies. You really think any of them will write that we are collaborating between highly advanced in India with highly advanced? This is a very casual language. Clearly, someone has tampered with whatever was the statement to make it clearly incorrect. So statement 2 is not correct. What I am only advocating is that in civil services preliminary examination, you need to be brave enough to read the statements even if you don't know anything about the topic which it covers, and then take a reasonable estimate regarding the correct answer choice. The answer here is A, right? Actually, National Innovation Foundation is for grassroots level innovation. It promotes people and small organizations which are doing innovation at a grassroots level. If you remember that, very good. Even if you don't remember, read statement 2 and reject it. In fact, you can smile at it, that this doesn't seem to be what any organization will write about itself, that we collaborate, we are a middleman between highly advanced in India and highly advanced in foreign universities. Right now, statement 36, easy question to answer. Impact of excessive or inappropriate use of nitrogenous fertilizers in agriculture. Statement 1 is talking about benefit, proliferation of nitrogen fixing microorganisms in soil. It's a benefit. You can disregard it immediately, and you can go to 2, increase in acidity of soil. 3 is leaching of nitrate to the groundwater, which means ruining groundwater or infecting groundwater, and you know this is a problem with regards to excessive use of nitrogenous fertilizers. 2 is about increase of acidity. This is a standard, this is something which you should have read. This is something which is used to criticize our urea policy, that we over subsidize urea, which has led to spoiling of NPK ratio in favor of nitrogen, which has led to a lot of environmental problems, in extra cost without any extra output. These kind of situations, not in this year, but in the previous year's economic survey, you had a blue box which talked about the problems which India is facing as a result of excessive use of nitrogen in the soil, which is a result of excessive or unjust subsidizing of urea. Right. So if you could have remembered that, the answer here is 2 and 3 only. The next question is on IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, frequently in news because it would reclassify species into threatened, endangered, critically endangered, these kind of categories. They come from IUCN. They have the red list which they keep on revising from time to time, and CITES, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species and of Wild Fauna and Flora. This is also one standard convention and agreement you should read about if you are preparing for the exam. right? And all you needed to know to answer this question or needed to recall was IUCN is not an organ of United Nations. It is what? It is a permanent observer. It's not an organ. So you can reject statement 1 and look at the beauty of rejection. If you are able to reject statement 1, you directly come to the answer, right? A, C and D all have statement 1 there. Clearly it has to be 2 and 3, which means you don't even need to read 2 and 3 if you are sure that 1 is not true. If you are not sure, then you can go ahead and read it. The answer, as we know, is 2 and 3 only. FRP. Now, why is this question here? FRP, sugarcane. There is a constant fight going on between sugarcane farmers, mill owners and government. So this is a classic case. This subsidizing of sugarcane is a classic case where we have managed to get the entire industry in such a mess. There is no way out, at least for now. So FRP is recommended. Now this is similar to MSP, but not MSP. It is a separate mechanism for sugarcane. Now the question says it is approved by which? Now Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, this is the body which recommends both MSP as well as FRP. Now even if you were able to notice approved, right, approval will be done by what? An executive body. Approval will be done by the executive body. In any case, if you were able to recall, that is frequently in news that the cabinet took a decision on the pricing or subsidy, something about sugarcane, you know the final authority has to be some agency in cabinet, right, and you could have come to the answer. So CSC, option B is the one which recommends, option A is the one which approves, right. So Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs is the one which approves this, and therefore the answer is A. Eastward flow of equatorial counter current, not an easy question to answer unless you are very good at geography, but if you were trying to bring in some logic here, you probably could have come down or zeroed in on the answer, which is Earth's rotation on its axis. This is the primary reason for eastward flow of the equatorial counter current. There are certain other theories too. In this case, so difference in salinity is also advocated by certain experts, and you may find references to this reason too. But we go by the most popular explanation, by the most logical explanation, which is Earth's rotation on its axis. It is responsible for the eastward flow of the equatorial counter current. Now a factual question. It looks like an extremely factual question, right? Place of pilgrimage and location, but they have done you a great favor. They have mentioned in location hills. You needed to ask yourself, where are these hills found? So if you knew, for example, if you knew Pushkar, where is Pushkar? Pushkar is in Rajasthan. So if you know Pushkar is in Rajasthan, you needed to ask yourself whether Mahadev hills, they extend towards that region, right? And if you were sure, no. If you are only sure about this, look at the options. If you are sure 3 is definitely not correct, you could have eliminated options B, C and D, and straight away you could have answered A. I am not saying you should have been sure about 3, you could have been sure about 2 not being true, right. So this seems like a very factual question, but this is actually a standard question from geography. If you have knowledge of hills and states from where they pass, you could have been, and pilgrimage and the states where they are, that much you should have known. You could have answered this question, and the answer should have been, or is rather, A. Only Sri Salem, which is in Nalamala hills, is correctly matched, others are incorrectly matched. Now Rowlatt Satyagraha. The question is on Rowlatt Satyagraha, and this is the 100th year of the return of Mahatma Gandhi. He had returned to India in 1915. Questions were expected, or at least a question was expected from what happened around 1915-16 when he came. This is not what he did immediately after coming to India, but surely this is during his initial struggle years before he established his method of fighting for India's independence. So in that sense, we would say an expected question. Now here, and surely in mains you will find one question with regards to this, what Mahatma Gandhi did after coming to India, or what were his motives to come to India, or maybe contrast what he did in South Africa with what he did in India in the initial years, or did he benefit from his experience in South Africa during his national movement in India. These kind of questions you can expect in mains 2015. Now statement 3 here is silly, you can immediately reject. Even if you had read history in school, you can reject, or even if you have watched movies on Bhagat Singh, you could have rejected this. This is talking about Simon Commission. It says demonstration against the arrival of Simon Commission coincided with Rowlatt Satyagraha. Right? Rowlatt Satyagraha led to what? Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Right? And Simon Commission came when? 1927. Demonstrations 1927-28. So how could it be that the two appear together in one statement? You can reject 3. If you reject 3, you come to 2 options only, right? You come to A and B. A and B both have statement 1, right? This is how actually you should be approaching the multiple choice questions. Both of them have 1. You need not worry about statement 1. You need to take a call on statement 2, which is in Rowlatt Satyagraha, Gandhiji tried to utilize the Home Rule League. Now, if you are not sure about this, you needed to come to a rational decision on this. Now, we are talking about the early years of Gandhi, in which case he was, and in these years he was trying to explore all options, right? And Home Rule League was a very dominant forum for India's national movement around that time. And the statement says Gandhiji tried to utilize the Home Rule League, right? It doesn't even say successfully used Home Rule League, tried to utilize. Obviously, this gives you a hint that surely, knowing Mahatma Gandhi, that he would explore all options, he would have tried to utilize the Home Rule League. The answer is 1 and 2 both. Both of these are correct. 1 and 2 only is option B is the correct one. In fact, he tried a lot to utilize Home Rule League. He was so much consonance with the Home Rule League that in 1920 Mahatma Gandhi was the president of All India Home Rule League. So both 1 and 2 are correct statement. So option B is the correct choice. Right? And again, a contender for the easiest question for this year, Ebola virus. Right? It's not even asking you technicalities of the virus, vaccine which has been developed for the virus, what does it contain, or about how the success rate of its trial. It's just asking you where was the outbreak. Right? You would have been bored of hearing about Ebola. Right? So you know we are talking about countries in West Africa, and straight away you would come, or you would simply remember Sierra Leone or Liberia. Liberia was again in news a few days ago that another case was found with Ebola. So you know the answer is B. Easiest, one of the easiest question. Now come to the next question. Fly ash, right? Fly ash produced by the power plants using coal as fuel. Which of the following statements is or correct? Right? Hopefully you would know the answer. If you don't know the answer, you would have to come to the usage of this. And in this case, what you could have done, like I have told you before, even in this case also, as you can see, it is applicable. Look at statement 3. Fly ash is made up of silicon dioxide and calcium oxide only, and does not contain any toxic elements. Now look at this statement. Do you think, don't you think it's extreme that there are only these two, and it also goes on to add does not contain any toxic elements? You can reject 3 by doing this. Now if you reject 3, right, you come down to options A and B. Both A and B have 2. You only need to take a call on statement 1, and statement 1 is actually easy. Even if you had read it once, you would know it is used in the production of bricks. So that's how you come to the answer, even with very limited information on this. Right? In this paper, there are at least 20 questions which you can answer just by simple rules of comprehension, by eliminating extreme options, by reading the statement and understanding that the statement seems to have been tampered with. That kind of an approach. The answer is, in this case, is 1 and 2. 3 is not correct, 1 and 2 are correct. Now dugong, a mammal found in India. If you knew dugong is also known as sea cow, probably you would have come to the answer straight away. If you don't know, if you did not know, You have to read the options. One is it is a herbivorous marine animal. So I'm assuming you don't know. So you leave this statement. You come to the next statement. It is found along the entire coast of India. Tell me if it is not an extreme statement. The entire coast of India, which would mean what? Not even 1 kilometer stretch is left out. Everywhere you go to the coastal area of India, you would find dugongs. If there were so many dugongs, one dugong would actually be sitting behind you right now and reading what I am or following my video with you. This is how why I say you just look for extreme options and eliminate them. So what happens with this is you eliminate two. You eliminate two options, A and B. You come to C and D. Both C and D have 3, which means you don't need to even read statement 3, which means it is protected under Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Now you need to take a tough decision whether one is correct or not. Now what I may say may sound surprising, what I am going to say right now, but for me, if I were attempting this question, it would have been, why would this statement be even here? Now two things. If you know it is called sea cow, you could have probably thought cow and therefore herbivorous. Funny, but then that approach you could have taken. The second one is, if it were not herbivorous, this kind of statement would not have been asked. Right? So you would have picked 1 and 3. Right? I am going for a scenario where I am assuming a smart rational test taker trying to go through the options and pick up the correct choices. Right? The answer is 1 and 3 both. Right? It is not found across the across the entire coast of India. It is mostly found in Park Bay and Gulf of Mannar. Economic critics of colonialism in India, 1, 2 and 3, Dadabhai Naoroji, absolutely sure, everyone would be absolutely sure on this. He was a critic, he was the one who made the term drain of wealth popular, right? The un-British rule of India, these phrases became popular because of Dadabhai Naoroji, and he did a lot of campaigning in Britain with regards to raising awareness about the colonialistic exploitation of India by England. 2 is G. Subramania Iyer. G. Subramania Iyer is the founder of The Hindu, your staple diet every day. Now, if you knew this, you could have come to a rational decision, right? And see, The Hindu even to this day does not leave any chance of criticizing the government. It would still criticize the government, the policies of the government, right? The independence has been achieved, 69 years are gone, but The Hindu continues to do what it was doing earlier, which means taking an objective view of the situation and coming up with rational, logical articles, not being scared of criticizing the government. That is how it had been started by G. Subramania Iyer. He had used it as a channel to criticize the policies of the government. R.C. Dutt is a famous historian, most famous for his book, The Economic History of India. And in his book, he sort of talks about the same things which Dadabhai Naoroji talks about, which is the colonialistic pattern of trade and how has England, by its occupation of India, destroyed the economy of India. Right? So answer in this case is 1, 2 and 3. All these 3 were economic critics of colonialism in India. Now again, one question which even if you don't know, you can answer. Global economic prospects, and by the way, this is continued. This is just continued from the last year. Last year they had asked, World Economic Outlook is published by which of the following agencies? This year they have asked, Global Economic Prospects is by which of these agencies? Clearly UPSC thinks there is some value in knowing which report is published by which agency. I am unable to figure out what value can it be, but they do think there is some value in remembering this. So therefore, as loyal candidates of the examination, you would memorize all this for the next year too. In this case, it's a simple thing. Global economic prospects. So it says global. Asian Development Bank, European Bank, US Federal Reserve, right? Asian Bank, European and American. There's only one which is concerned about global affairs, which is the World Bank. Right? The answer is the World Bank. So let's move to question 47. Now question 47 is about SLR, right? Statutory liquidity ratio. And if we cut it, if we reduce it by 50 basis points, what which of these scenarios is likely to happen. Now, why is this question here? This question is here because Dr. Raghuram Rajan, the governor of the Reserve Bank of India, had openly criticized the banks for not passing on cuts in interest rates which they should have after he had reduced SLR by a few basis points, by a few hundred basis points rather. So, what happens if you cut SLR, right? See, what are the banks interested in? Banks are interested in their overall profit. So, what is profit? Your profit margin into overall revenue. Let us say if we are talking about this, or in the case of banks, we are talking about their net interest margin multiplied by the amount of loan that they give. If SLR is cut down by 50 basis points, it simply means 0.5% of more funds of the liabilities NDTL more becomes available to be given as loans, right. So, which means even if they reduce the interest rate slightly, they may still be able to make that much of money. So, as commercial entities, if they are acting rationally, they should be cutting interest rate if SLR is getting reduced, which means more funds are becoming available, so they can sacrifice slightly on the interest rates. And the banks had not been doing so, therefore, on one fine day the RBI governor openly criticized, and on the very same day or at least on the next day many banks cut interest rates. If you remember this incident, then you would know, otherwise it is clearly logical that if you are if the RBI is reducing the SLR by any number of basis points, banks may cut their, that is why, see again the statement is important, may cut their lending rates, right. That itself should make you consider this. Now, contrast this with statements A and D. What does statement A say? India's GDP growth rate increases drastically. Again, like I have been saying, extreme option. Drastically would mean what? Overnight, right. So, obviously you can reject this. B is FIIs may bring more capital into our country, right. Not even directly related to this. FIIs may bring more capital, it is a function of too many factors there, and in fact interest rate coming down may not encourage them from bringing more capital, it will actually discourage them. D again says it may drastically reduce the liquidity to the banking system. What is happening? Liquidity is increasing. So, you go for the right option, which is C. Nanotechnology, standard area from science and technology to be asked questions on, and statements are also very standard. One is targeted drug delivery is made possible by nanotechnology, and you know this. Even if you do not know this, you can guess this. Surely you can guess this. The targeted drug delivery, which means the drug is sent exactly to the location at which it is intended to, is made possible by nanotechnology. Second is regarding gene therapy, that nanotechnology can largely contribute to gene therapy, which is also true. And see, look at the framing of the statement. For the right statement, it is always like this, can largely contribute. It does not say is the main contributor, is the only contributor, then it would have been a wrong statement to make, right. So, here both of them are correct. The answer is C, both 1 and 2. Now, what should be your work for the coming year or even for mains? Of course, you need to know about nanotechnology, India's initiatives taken by India for nanotechnology. You need to know about gene therapy, how does it work, what else is involved in gene therapy other than nanotechnology. All these should be your work carried forward from this test, from this paper. 49 is an easy question. Markets in agriculture products are regulated under, right. It is such an easy question that even Rahul Gandhi knows the answer to this. I am sure if you ask this question, he will know. Why? Because do you remember why Rahul Gandhi was mentioning APMC before the general elections, right. All the Congress ruled states had taken the perishable food items and fruits out of the purview of APMC, right. So, that is what they had done. APMC is a big problem area. APMC acts of various states are big problem areas for Indian agriculture, and even though Model Act was passed in 2003 and agriculture being a state subject, it was left upon states to pass their own acts similar to Model Acts. Not all the states have done so, but lot of discussion on this, lot of articles, editorials on this. I do not think it would have been a problem for an average candidate to understand that the correct answer here is B, and APMC is And agriculture, APMC, this is a separate chapter, an exclusive chapter in the economic survey for this year. National Aquatic Animal of India, again school level quiz competition kind of question. The answer is Gangetic dolphin. The reason why it is so is that dolphins, this Gangetic dolphin is found in Ganga only, and which is supposed to be a very pure river. So therefore, this is a very pure animal living in a very pure river, which it has been made as the national aquatic animal of India. And we understand the river is not so pure, even though hopefully the animal continues to be pure. 51 is Congress Socialist Party, right? So standard question from at least Congress Socialist Party you should know about. 1934, this was set up, founded in 1934. Now you need to look at the statements and take your call on that. Right, statement 3 says it advocated separate electorate for minorities and oppressed classes. If you know the nature of socialist and communist parties, they would not be bringing religion in their politics. They would not be doing that. So even though it would be based on the basis of social equality, but religion is not a part of these parties usually. If you can guess this, or if you can remember this, you would have been able to eliminate statement 3. And even if you are able to understand that, remember that this was 1934, the separate electorate scenarios were making news around 1930-32, before the Pune Pact, around the time of Pune Pact. So this is something which is, we are talking about an era, a time period far beyond when this was in news. So statement 3 is to be rejected. If you reject statement 3, you look at the option, you come down to 1 and 2 only, or none of the above. So let's read any of 1 and 2. If you read 2, it says it wanted to establish the dictatorship of proletariat. Now what is the dictatorship of proletariat? Where do you find this? Of course, the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx, which means by bloody revolution, proletariat will achieve its dictatorship. Socialist Party, they are to Congress Socialist Party, affiliated with the Congress. Many members of Congress were active there. Do you think it would have this as one of its aims, to establish dictatorship of proletariat? Obviously not. 2 is not correct. You can come to the option which is correct option, which is D. However, even if you read 1, it advocated a boycott of British goods and tax evasion. We are talking of boycott of British goods happened long back during Swadeshi period. Evasion of taxes, even though Congress Socialist Party had mentioned in 1940 that their followers should look at evading, or not evading, but not paying taxes, but it was never fructified. Therefore, the answer is D. All these statements are incorrect. Next is a standard question from polity, right? Rajya Sabha and what it cannot do. So Rajya Sabha, we know, can do nothing about money bills other than have a look at the bills, make suggestions which may or may not be accepted, right? So that is what Rajya Sabha can do maximum with money bills, right? So obviously 1 is correct, has no power either to reject or to amend a money bill. It can only read the bills and make suggestions to the Lok Sabha. 2 is Rajya Sabha cannot vote on the demand for grants. So what is demand for grants in relation to the budget? Obviously, Rajya Sabha does not have any power of voting with regards to the budget. Otherwise, the government would not have been even able to pass the budget, as it has not been able to pass anything in the parliament so far. 3 is Rajya Sabha cannot discuss the annual financial statement. What is the annual financial statement? The union budget. Obviously, Rajya Sabha discusses it, and Rajya Sabha discusses it better than Lok Sabha discusses it, because Rajya Sabha has only that to do with regards to budget. So therefore, they spend a lot of quality time discussing the budget. So therefore, the answer is 1 and 2 are correct, and 3 is not. We come to B. Government of India Act 1919. So Government of India Acts 1909, 1935, eternal topics for the examination for both prelims as well as mains. So what did the Act of 1919 do? First, it separated the subjects between the center and the provinces, and then at the provincial level there was another round of separation, which was reserved and transferred subjects, right? So obviously, Government of India Act of 1919, it defined the jurisdiction of the central and provincial governments, which is option B. The only doubt here, if at all it is to be cast, is with regards to clearly defined. But surely Government of India Act 1919 gave a structure to this, therefore we'll go with the option B. Consumer price index number for industrial workers. Even if you look at the options and you have to pick up one choice without any background information, you will come to the right choice for this. Otherwise, you would remember that before we had the current series of consumer price index, which has three indices, say CPI urban, CPI rural and CPI combined. We used to have four types of indices for consumer price index, one of which was CPI IW, which is industrial worker, which is obviously for the purpose of wage adjustments. It is tracked by the Labor Bureau. The answer is C. So ice cube, this question is about ice cube. I would say this is the kind of question which you can answer only if you know it. It will be difficult to answer the question without any background information on this. In this case, the correct answer is all the statements are correct, and for someone who was reading news regularly, it would have been easy to answer this, because this has been in news, because ice cube has been so all these statements are correct. It is at the South Pole. It's a particle detector that records interactions of a nearly massless subatomic particle, which is called a neutrino. There previously have been questions asked on neutrinos. So clearly neutrino is a favorite topic with those who set the paper for this. The three statements, all of them are correct. You can find out more information from the wiki page or the actual website of ice cube. 56 is an easy question. Agreement on agriculture. Agreement on the application of sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Even if you are not sure about the first two, you surely would have been fed up reading about the third one, which is peace clause. What the previous government did with regards to peace clause, what the current government did with regards to peace clause, what is India's position on with regards to subsidies being given to agriculture. Right, these things, these were in news a lot. An extremely easy question to answer, because this is between India and the WTO. Right, so India, the Bali framework, India single-handedly held it to hostage, in a way blackmailing the WTO that unless it gets exemptions with regards to subsidies on agriculture, it would not be going ahead with the Bali framework. Right, so that was the extent to which it was in news. A lot of criticism about India, but then India had a clear stand to make that we cannot be left out. We are one of the biggest countries, and therefore and we are country of farmers. We need protection to be given to our farmers. We cannot continue with this extension of exemption by 2 years or 4 years. We need to have a permanent settlement on this, and therefore the answer is C, WTO. Near field communication technology. Right, you read the option, you can come to the conclusion, or most likely you would know about near field communication technology. Now again, look at statement 2. What does statement 2 say? It is designed for use by devices which can be at a distance of even a meter from each other. Now this is where the person who was framing the question has tampered with the right statement, and you can detect it. You can smile while you have caught, after you have caught the mischief. Why? Because at any place, do you actually think it would be written like this, that it can be used even 1 meter? Right? Usually what would you find? A range being mentioned. Right? So this would cast a doubt in your mind. And secondly, you would understand this, we are talking about near field communication. If it was to be used at a meter too, why would it be called near field communication? Now it is a contactless communication technology, surely, that uses electromagnetic radio signals. It can use encryption while sending sensitive information. You do understand this has to be a requirement if this technology has to be applied to day-to-day lives. Answer is 1 and 3 only. Golan Heights, it says sometimes it appears in news. I would say it many times it appears in news, or every 1 month it would come in news, because of the ingression by one particular country, which is Israel. Right? So you do understand that this is something which is causing a lot of tension in the Middle East, especially because of Israel's allegedly unfair occupation of a large part of the Golan Heights. And the options, if you read the option, you just come to one conclusion: Middle East. 59, one of the easiest questions from economics: convertibility of rupee implies what? It doesn't even talk about. So, see, in the earlier years, what kind of question would you expect from UPSC? You would expect statement 1 to be rupee is convertible on current account, statement 2 to be rupee is convertible on capital account, and then you have to find out 1 only, 2 only, or both 1 and 2, or neither 1 or 2. That would have been a trickier question to answer than this. It simply says convertibility of rupee implies what? Obviously, convertibility of a currency means just a foreigner comes with with his or her own currency and exchanges easily with the local currency, can buy asset in, let's say if we are talking about India, rupee, can come and buy asset in India by using his or her dollars or whatever currency is there. The rupee has to be, if rupee were to be made convertible there. So, what is rupee? Rupee is convertible on current account, fully convertible on current account, but partially convertible on capital account. That is the status in India right now. There is a lot of debate about whether India should make rupee fully convertible on capital account, but the consensus right now, and even the RBI governor keeps on saying it may be very risky for us to do that, but they are reviewing this possibility. What it will immediately do is it will bring in a lot of investment to India, but on the flip side, let us say right now what is happening in late August 2015, right now what is happening? Capital markets are falling. It's one of the worst time for capital markets. What would have happened? Immediately investment would have been withdrawn and our markets would have crashed. So, there are pros and cons to capital account convertibility, and evergreen topic for mains examination surely. In this case, it was a simple decision, option C. Now, medieval region, present region, state. So, what was the name in the medieval times and what is the current name right now of the region? You have to mix and match this. This question is to be answered only if you know, otherwise it would be difficult to come to a conclusion. A very fact based question. Answer in this case is 2 only. Durgara was Jammu, Champaka was Chamba, which is in Himachal Pradesh, Kuluta is Kullu, not Malabar. Rivers and their tributaries. Regular questions have been asked in preliminary examination from these topics. Now, we are talking about tributaries of Godavari. In this case, I think you could have easily eliminated 4, Pennar. Pennar you could have easily eliminated. So, you have to take a call on Vansdhara, because 2 and 3 are there in option A and D both. You have to take a call on Vansdhara, and if you could remember it correctly, you would understand that Vansdhara is not a tributary of Godavari. Therefore, the answer is 2 and 3 only, which is option D. So, again, as we are seeing a trend, this year we are seeing tributaries of the Godavari river. Next year you might be asked about tributaries of Narmada, any other major river of India. You need to memorize them, and if you do not want to memorize them, you just need to become absolutely comfortable with the geographic map of India, hills and rivers, where they flow from, to an extent that you should be able to draw them, the flow of rivers from one part to another and the tributaries. 62 is about joint sitting. Of course, this has been in news because the government mentioned that they will explore the option of joint sitting, and the question is actually very simple. So, if joint sitting is there, which of these is true? Statement A is a simple majority of members present and voting. Now, even if there was a doubt between, let us say, A and C or D, you just needed to ask yourself, why is the government so confident that if it brings in a joint sitting, it will be able to pass the bills, which means even if the members back out, right? So, what can the opposition do? They will execute a walkout that no, we do not agree with this. Even in that case, the government should be able. That is why they are so confident that we will bring in joint sitting. Then you do understand it has to be members present and voting, not absolute majority of the houses or 2/3 majority of the houses. Answer is clearly A, a simple majority of members present and voting. Question 63 is about combination of mangrove forest, evergreen forest and deciduous forest. Where are these 3 forests found together, right? And in this case, the answer has to be Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And I think option B was a trap thing there, South West Bengal, because most people would have directly gone for Bengal because mangrove and Sundarban, and then you would go for Bengal. However, if you know the Andaman and Nicobar Islands really well, you do understand that not just these three, but many other, at least 9 other types of forest trees are found in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. It's a very unique kind of, and that's why we call it our typical forest coverage of Andaman and Nicobar. The answer is Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The biggest surprise of this year, question number 64 in series B, exactly the same as one question in the previous year, General Studies paper 1 of 2014. The same question has been asked again. We may wonder why. There can be many reasons why the same question has been asked. One, maybe they want you to look at the official answer key for the controversial question. Two, there is somewhere a question bank from where they select questions, and someone forgot that this question has already been asked. Three is coincidence, that 2 panels sitting separately came up with the exact same question in the same order, options also the same, right. So we can reject 3. Most likely this is an oversight, they forgot that this question has already been asked. Whatever be the case, those who had not read the official answer key would have been cursing themselves if they had not answered it correctly. The answer as given by UPSC itself, and therefore we have to be 100% sure about this, is 3 and 4 only, which is option D. Kosala and Magadha, obviously Buddha did not visit Gandhara, which was on the other side. About Avanti, there was a lot of controversy last year. UPSC resolved it by giving the answer as 3 and 4 only. An easy question, the next one, ozone depleting substances, right. Which of these is related to ozone depleting substances? Even without reading the option, this would come to your mind. Montreal Protocol, standard thing. Bretton Woods Conference, right. Why would you even go for Bretton Woods Conference? IMF, World Bank, they emerged from Bretton Woods Conference after the Second World War. Kyoto Protocol is to do with climate change overall, and Nagoya Protocol is to do with biodiversity. Therefore, no doubt at all, Montreal Protocol. Arrival of Babur into India led to which of these? Right. Statement 2 you could have easily rejected. Introduction of the arch and dome in the region's architecture. This was done by the Delhi Sultanate. This was much earlier than the arrival of Babur. So therefore, you can be sure about this. So you have to choose between 1, 3 or both among these choices, right. So if you look at the options, you have 1 and 3. And you have 3 only. So you have to go for either of these choices. So we need not worry about 3. Even if you did not know, this is the beauty of preliminary examination or any multiple choice question. Even if you are not sure about Timurid dynasty and you were sure that 2 is not true, you know that 3 has to be true. So you need to take a call on 1, introduction of gunpowder in the subcontinent, right. Babur in the Battle of Panipat is associated with heavy use of gunpowder. Therefore, in many ways it is correlated with the coming of Babur, the use of gunpowder. The fact is that gunpowder was introduced much before Babur came and used it heavily. Therefore, 1 is not correct. There is a very interesting Wikipedia page, History of Gunpowder, and it talks about history of gunpowder across countries, and you can go to the section for India and check it out. One of the easiest questions, or let us just admit this is the easiest question. Niti Aayog has replaced which of the following? I don't think it makes sense for us to spend a lot of time discussing this. Even school children may be able to answer the questions on Jan Dhan Yojana and Niti Aayog, because the Prime Minister has talked so much about them, you just can't avoid listening about this even if you are not preparing for the examination. The reason why this question would have been asked, we are not sure. But clearly the Prime Minister would be happy with this question, and those who were writing the paper would have been thanking Narendra Modi, the current Prime Minister, for making talking so much about Niti Aayog and replacement of Planning Commission. Clearly that question will not differentiate your performance. What is Rio +20 conference often mentioned in the news? Rio conference was the so-called Earth Summit, right? And after Earth Summit, we had Rio Plus 10 Summit in South Africa, and then we had Rio Plus 20 again in Rio, which was a very hyped conference. Also, it did not come up, although it did not come up with a lot of concrete results there. All these conferences have been United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, right? A standard question from environment, and the answer is A. An easy question from polity. Executive power of the Union of India is vested in the Prime Minister. You know, Article 52, it is vested in the President of India. Statement 2 is the Prime Minister is the ex officio chairman of the Civil Services Board. If you read the powers and functions of Cabinet Secretary, you do understand that Cabinet Secretary is the ex officio chairman of the Civil Services Board. This would come as the first line under powers and functions of the Cabinet Secretary. So, therefore, both of these are incorrect. Our answer option is D. Goldilocks zone, this term would always come in news whenever NASA or any other space agency comes or says that there may be a possibility of life on such and such planet, right. So, then they would mention this is also in the Goldilocks zone. So, Goldilocks zone is simply any planet which is in Goldilocks zone is in a situation which is similar to Earth, which means at just the right distance from its own star, like Earth is from Sun. That is what is called Goldilocks zone. So, since we cannot be looking everywhere in the space for Earth-like planets, to begin with, and which may not be the correct thing to do, the scientists are looking at regions at the areas which are as far from their own sun, their own star as Earth is from the Sun, right. The answer option is C, just the right distance from its star. If the planet is there, then you say it is in the Goldilocks zone. So, salt law being broken is South India. Which of these on the Tanjore coast? Bread and butter question from history, C. Rajgopalachari. It has to be C. Rajgopalachari. So, Mahatma Gandhi was doing it in Dandi and C. Rajgopalachari was doing it in Tanjore. Answer is B. Now, this is a difficult question unless you are really good at ancient history or you know about each of these rulers, right. So, it is talking about a ruler who founded a new city on the south bank of a tributary to river Krishna, which gives you a hint. Krishna probably gives you a hint, and undertook to rule his new kingdom as the agent of a deity. And he said so. He said the land belongs to the deity, and he is ruling in the name of that deity. The answer in this case is Harihar, right. Harihar and Bukka, they founded this Vijayanagar empire, the Vijayanagar kingdom. We are talking about Harihar I here, who is responsible for this. Amogh Varsa was from Rashtrakuta dynasty, Balala was from Hosala dynasty, and Pratap Rudra was from Devanagari kingdom. And the answer is C. Harihar. An easy question, again school quiz level quiz type question. Statement 1, first woman president of Indian National Congress. We know the first woman president was Annie Besant. The first Indian woman president was Sarojini Naidu. Therefore, statement 1 is incorrect. The first Muslim president was indeed Badruddin Tayyabji. Therefore, 1 is incorrect and 2 is correct. Answer is B. 74, Green Climate Fund. So, we are talking about Green Climate Fund, GCF, which was instituted a few years ago and which is frequently in news because it is alleged by developing countries that they do not get the funds that they should be getting and they deserve to get, right. So, statement 1 is correct. It is the purpose is to assist developing countries in adaptation and mitigation practices to counter climate change. Now, statement 2, if you read statement 2, UNEP, OECD, Asian Development Bank and World Bank, all these are coming together, right, to sponsor Green Climate Fund. even on the face of it you can reject this. This would be like all the superheroes coming together to eliminate climate change, that kind of a scenario. Statement 2 is clearly incorrect. 1 is correct, answer is A. Bank PO kind of question. Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace, Disarmament and Development for 2014 was given to which one of the following? Even if you were confused, all you needed to ask was which of these has done anything significant in the last few years, right? So, what are the options? BARC, Baba Atomic Research Center, Indian Institute of Science, ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, and Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. And probably you would have thought that ISRO has been doing a lot of good things, so maybe it deserved this award more than others, or the better way would have been to remember this. The answer is indeed Indian Space Research Organization. Question 76, Cabinet Mission. Statement 1 is it recommended a federal government. Now, what is the federal government? Where the provinces get almost equal powers or more powers than they would get in a unitary kind of government, right? So, what did Cabinet Mission recommend, and which year are we talking about? We are talking about 1946. It recommended groupings of provinces, right? Even if you were able to remember that, groupings of provinces, and then the provinces were to decide whether or not to merge. This was recommended. Obviously, it recommended a federal government there. 2 is it enlarged the powers of Indian courts. 3 is it provided for more Indians in the ICS, Indian Civil Service. Now, in 1946, it was absolutely clear India is going to get an independence. It was just a matter of when, not if. Right? So, why would Cabinet Mission be recommending that there will be more Indians in the ICS? It knew, when it knew that very soon there will be only Indians in the ICS. Right? So, 3 is a stupid option you could have rejected. 1 you know is correct. You need not even worry about statement 2 then, right? Because statement, and obviously enlarge the powers of the Indian courts, not a part of the mandate given to the Cabinet Mission. You know that around this time the only question was how will India be bifurcated, what kind of government, and how will the government be formed. There is only one, which is option A. 77, another question, the second question from National Park, right? So, you need to memorize national park, where they are, what kind of climate do they have, what species do they support. Surely this is something which you should be doing. Now, this one is talking about which of this has a climate that varies from tropical to subtropical to temperate and Arctic. So, we are talking about 4 different kinds of climate in one. The answer is Namdapa National Park. This is the one which has all these types of climate. You need not know about whether which national park has what. All you need to know is which national park is in which state, and then look at the climate patterns of that particular state to make an informed, to come to an informed decision. 78, one of the easiest question, Amnesty International. What is it? One phrase which will come to your mind is human rights. They make a lot of noise, they make the most noise, not always for the right reasons, right? They have been in controversy. In India, the government has not been happy with what they have been saying. In fact, most governments are not happy with Amnesty International. Even Pakistan has been blocking their funds recently. But you do know that they have to do with human rights. It is a global human rights movement. Whenever India would be executing someone's capital punishment, sentencing to death or executing these, the Amnesty International will be making a lot of noise. It has a campaign, a very strong campaign to eliminate capital punishment from throughout the world, a global human rights movement. A difficult question from art and culture, right? It says, which among the following was made earliest? Extremely difficult question. Lingaraj temple at Bhubaneswar, rock cut elephant at Dhauli, rock cut monuments at Mahabalipuram, Varaha image at Udaygiri. Right? Unless you have memorized that where are these artifacts, which year erected in, it would be difficult to answer. The answer in this case is B. Rock cut elephant at Dhauli, it was in 3rd century. Varaha image at Udaygiri was 4th century AD. So, actually, if you knew the rocket elephant at Dolly is much older than others, that it is in BC, you could have come to this answer without knowing when were the other artifacts formed. Rock cut monuments in Mahabalipuram, 7th century AD, and Lingaraj temple is the latest one, 11th century AD. Now, question 80 is about Indian feudal system. Although many experts would say India never had a feudal system, because feudal system is associated with medieval Europe. So, that is what you call feudal system, but we had a sort of feudal system. Now, you need to read the statements, and here the right approach would be to select the one which is definitely correct, reject the ones which is definitely incorrect. Statement 2 is definitely correct. Emergence of administrative structure based on control and possession of land. So, Jagirdari, Zamindari, this kind of a setup, obviously that is the defining element of feudal system of India. Clearly 2 is correct, right. So, 2 is correct, we can reject option C. Now, you read statement 3, creation of lord vassal relationship between the feudal lord and his overlord. Lord vassal relationship in feudalism was prevalent only in Europe and nowhere else. Even if you Google for lord vassal relationship India, you will get nothing. All you will get is scholarly articles for Europe. And lord vassal relationship is not based on exploitation. In India's case, it was based on exploitation. The king would exploit the zamindar, zamindars would exploit the peasants and the farmers. In Europe, the lord vassal relationship used to be mutually enforced. If the vassal does really well, he would be promoted, right, and the vassal would do anything for the lord, even go and fight in the wars for the lord. That kind of relationship, we never had that, because if this was the case, then we would say Indian feudalism is very similar to European feudalism, right. The controversy is that we did not even have the actual feudal system. 3 is the defining characteristic of feudal system, which is lacking in Indian feudalism. 3 is not correct, 2 is correct, and if you look at the answer option, the only place where you find 2 and not 3 is option A, which makes statement 1, which you would otherwise probably be thinking, why should it be correct? A very strong centralized political authority and a very weak provincial or local political authority. But if you think, except for a few years where the Mughal emperors were weak and the provincial local leadership became very strong, usually you would find it to be centered in Delhi. The leadership was strongly centered in Delhi. So, therefore, that will make 1 as correct. The correct answer here will be 1 and 2 only. Statement 1 and 2 are correct. Option A is the first one. Biocarbon Fund Initiative for Sustainable Forest Landscape is managed by. So, yet another question which is like a quiz contest at a school level, and in this case I would say it would have been difficult to make a rational guess, because most people who have guessed have gone for option C, Biocarbon Fund Initiative for Sustainable Forest Landscape, right. They have gone for UNEP because it says Sustainable Forest Landscape, but the key word here was fund initiative. This is a fund initiative, right. In any case, you could have eliminated Asian Development Bank because it has to do with things in Asia, and International Monetary Fund because it has to do with financial stability. It is not going to care about sustainability of forests. So, you have to take a call between UNEP and World Bank, because either you know it. So, in that case you would mark it as World Bank. If you did not know, the focus here should have been on Biocarbon Fund Initiative, which means something to do with carbon trading, facilitation of that. It is being done by, and funding for sustainability of forests, it is being done by the World Bank, not by UNEP. 82, India is a member of which among the following? In these cases, I would say these are the easiest questions, where you find statement 1, 2 and 3. All you need to do is hunt for one of them which is exactly correct and or one of them which is exactly wrong. As in this case, you would know Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, 10 countries. With this group, India has a relationship, right. With ASEAN, India has a free trade agreement in goods as well as services. So, if India was a member of ASEAN, Why would it have a relationship with its own self? That would be very narcissistic to have a relationship with ASEAN, of which it is a member. Clearly, India is not a member. It has 10 members. India would love to be a member. India is not a member, right? So 2 is definitely not correct. Now look at the beauty of the options now. If you know 2 is not correct, you can reject A and C. You come to B and D, which means now you need not worry about Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. If you know, well and good. Even if you don't know, you need not worry about Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. You need to just read statement 3, which is East Asia Summit. Now what is East Asia Summit? East Asia Summit used to be ASEAN plus 6. So with ASEAN, even if you have gone to the wiki page of ASEAN, or if you have followed any ASEAN summit, you would know that there are 3 kinds of summits with ASEAN. One is ASEAN Summit, second is ASEAN plus 3, which is China, Japan and South Korea. And then you have ASEAN plus 6, which means in addition to China, Japan and South Korea, you have India, Australia and New Zealand. ASEAN plus 6 is called East Asia Summit. And recently, Russia and the United States, they have also been included in this. So it would become ASEAN plus 8. It does not matter, in any case India was always a member of East Asia Summit. Therefore, the answer will be 3 only, which is B. Now 83, steel production industry requires the import of saltpeter, rock phosphate, coking coal, all of the above. What will immediately strike to you is that we definitely import a lot of coking coal, and the other thing will be that we need the other 2. Surely we need them for steel production. However, the question is, our steel production industry requires the import of which of these. So the import requirement is only with regards to coking coal, which is option C, and therefore we will go with option C, coking coal. 84, one of the easiest questions in polity. 5th and 6th schedules, they relate to which of the following? Last year they asked 10th schedule relates to which of the following? Right? A very easy question to answer. It has to do with the scheduled tribes, protection of the interests of scheduled tribes, option A. 85 has to do with polity, and if you look at again, because it talks about statement 1, 2 and 3, an easy question to answer. You can select or reject. First one says Department of Revenue is responsible for preparation of union budget. And which department is responsible? Department of Economic Affairs. That's why it's always advisable to read the budget document. Whenever it is presented, you read it completely, even the initial pages, because these days they are asking a lot of questions. Which agency takes care of this? This belongs to which ministry? So earlier we would worry more about the content there. Now we also need to read the foreword and dedications, everything clearly. In any case, Department of Economic Affairs is a standard part of preparation, that it's for budget. Now no amount can be withdrawn from Consolidated Fund of India, CFI, without the authorization from the Parliament of India. We know this, right? You would know this clearly, even if you have read your polity book twice. Once, if you read it only once, then it would not be easy to recall, but you know that 2 is correct and 1 is not. Right? 2 is correct and 1 is not. Why is 1 not? Because Department of Economic Affairs. 2 is correct. Now what about 3? All the disbursements made from public account also need the authorization from the Parliament of India. You know that it says no authorization is required for withdrawal from public account. Therefore, the answer is 2 only, option C. Question 86, custodian of the Constitution of India. This question is causing some controversy, because I would say 20% of people have marked the President of India. Clearly no one is going to mark the Prime Minister of India and hopefully Lok Sabha Secretariat. These 2 are silly options. Between the President of India and the Supreme Court of India, which one is the custodian? The Constitution says the Supreme Court is the custodian of fundamental rights. It doesn't actually, theoretically, it does not make the Supreme Court the custodian of the entire constitution, but the fact is that the Supreme Court has the power of judicial review, and it can declare anything null and void if it violates the principles upon which the constitution has been built, basically the basic structure of the constitution, which means the custodian of the Constitution of India is the Supreme Court of India and not the President of India. Question 87, accelerated irrigation benefit program. Now, in each of these statements there are two variables, the year and the objective, which makes it a difficult question, because see, accelerated irrigation benefits program, you will be able to understand that this is done for giving grants to states, not directly to farmers. So, the fund goes to the states, but the year you may not be too sure, 1996, 97, what if it is 97, 98, what if 95, 96. Therefore, this becomes difficult to answer. And similarly, in statement 2, you would know that command area development program has to do with water use efficiency. You would not be sure about the year, right? And you would only hope that at least they are not so cruel that they have tampered the year by one here and there. In this case, the answer is 2 is correct, 1 is not. There is nothing wrong with the year or the years. The only thing is that loan assistance is given not to farmers but to the states. Therefore, the answer is B. Question 88, Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. Here your choice would come down to just 2 of the 4, which would be Food Safety and Standards Act and Environment Protection Act. And you can answer it logically even if you were confused between these two options. Food Safety and Standards Act would relate to what? Food items. Now, Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, right? So, maybe for BT brinjal you may think it is applicable, but what about BT cotton, right? And also, why is Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee frequently in news? When is the last time it was in news? When it approved field trials for genetically modified crops. So, what is the controversy? The controversy is that it may tamper with the ecosystem, with the environment, that the field trials may spill beyond the trial fields to other areas and it will be difficult to control. Clearly, it gives approval for field trials. So, therefore, Environment Protection Act would make more sense, and you may also think that an act of 2006 date is too early for it to be leading to Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee's birth, or simply see it has to do with environment. The most frequent reason for it being in news is environmental problems may emerge from field trials. Therefore, you should have marked Environment Protection Act of 1986, which is the correct answer. Mekong Ganga cooperation. Standard question. I think you should know about all these international organizations of which India is a part of. India is a part of Mekong Ganga cooperation. Who are the other members? Right? Who are the other members? You can remember easily: Cambodia, Laos, CLTV. Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, and Myanmar, along with India. These are the members of the CLTVM, along with India are the members of Mekong Ganga cooperation. Or you can just make a logical guess, China is not a part of it. If China was a part of it, 2 things would have happened. India would not have liked being a part of it, and 2, this would have been much bigger. This would have been more frequently in news had China been a part of this, right? And Bangladesh is obviously not a part of this. Answer is C. And you have to identify here which of the following are not a participant, not that which of the following are participants. So, 1 and 3 are not participants in Mekong Ganga cooperation. Next, we have a very simple question from economics or Indian economy. Basel III Accord relates to which of these? Pattern emerging. Last year they asked NDTL relates to which of the following sectors? A very simple question. This year Basel III relates to which of these? Obviously Basel III is to do with banking sector. So, what is the change in the nature of questions? In the previous years you would have expected UPSC to ask questions with regards to the capital adequacy requirements of Basel III, India's level of preparation with regards to Basel III, what has the RBI done with regards to Basel III implementation in India. What have they asked us now? You just need to find where is banking and put a tick mark there. Answer is B. Simple question to answer. Now, a question on geography. Winds which blow between 30 degree and 60 degrees south latitudes throughout the year are known as westerlies. Right. Now, so for someone who is good at geography, this would have been a cakewalk. You do understand that this is not true, 30 degree and 60 degree there. And statement 2 is moist air masses that cause winter rains in northwestern region of India are part of westerlies. You would have read it so many times. Even in your NCERT you would have found this. I would say one you can answer even logically. So, between 30 degree north and 60 degrees south, the world is symmetric, right. So, you should have expected 30 degree north and 30 degrees south, or maybe you would have expected 30 degrees south and 60 degrees south, or 30 degree on one side and similarly on the other side, right. This says 30 degree north and 60 degrees south. It does not make a lot of sense. So, even that way you could have done this, right. So, actually what is westerlies? Between 30 degree north and 60 degrees south on one side, and in the southern hemisphere between 30 degrees south and 60 degrees south, that is westerly, not between 30 degree and 60 degree on the other side. So, this is a standard NCERT question, only statement 2 is correct. Indian Ocean Rim Association for Regional Cooperation, again one grouping of which India is a part of. You can answer this question without much knowledge about Indian Ocean Rim. Read the statement. It was established very recently in response to incidents of piracy and accidents of oil spills. Right? When is the last time you had a huge oil spill in Indian Ocean, and what do you mean by very recently? Last year, last 5 years, last 10 years? Statement itself should make you doubt this. What is the range of recent, right? And is it in response to one incidents of piracy, maybe accidents of oil spills? How many oil spills, how many big oil spills have happened in the Indian Ocean? Yes. And statement 2, like I have told you before, again in this case also, an alliance meant for maritime security only. Now, which alliance will declare that we will discuss only this and only this? Right? Clearly someone has tampered with the correct statement. The answer is D, neither 1 nor 2. It was established in 1997. Surely we cannot call 1997 as very recently, and it was not in response to incidents of piracy, but with an aim to promote economic and technical cooperation, including expansion of trade and investment. Right, so answer is neither 1 nor 2. In easy question, an easy question from history, split in Indian National Congress resulting in the emergence of moderates and Swadesis, bread and butter question, right, 1905. Now, it says which of the following movements has contributed, not even year or Surat split, right. It's not even asking you about Surat and 1905, it's just asking which of the following movement. You know about the year, you know these are the early years of Indian National Congress. We are talking about when moderates were still, had still not given up to the extremists. So, only Swadesi movement can be there. Quit India movement 1942, non-cooperation movement is much later, 1920, civil disobedience movement is 1930-31. The only option you could have marked was option A, a very easy question from history. So, 94 is it gives you a scenario. The roots of living trees, they turn into robust bridges, and as trees grow the roots become stronger, therefore the bridges become stronger. Where do you find these living root bridges? Right. Now, this would have been a difficult question probably if you had 4 states given from northeast India only. I think at the very outset you could have convinced yourself we are talking about a northeast state, and the only northeast state here is Meghalaya. Most likely you would have seen this in television. If you have gone to northeast, you would have probably even experienced these bridges, and or you understand it is not possible in Himachal Pradesh, Jharkhand or Tamil Nadu to have these bridges, living root bridges. So, this seems like a very factual question, but because of the nature of the options, you could have eliminated 3 and come to the right answer. Now, why are the tides formed in oceans and seas? Gravitational force of the sun, moon, or centrifugal force of the earth? The answer is, and it's a standard question from science, It is primarily because of gravitational force of the moon and centrifugal force of the earth, but the gravitational force of the sun also plays a small role in the formation of tides. The answer should be 1, 2 as well as 3. All this. And 96, Indian remote sensing satellite. So you know, remote sensing satellites are used to map the territory of India for fishing or for crop productivity or production, and with this you can look at the option. One is assessment of crop productivity. Clearly it helps in making Indian agriculture more productive. Locating groundwater resources, right? By scanning it is able to locate groundwater resources. It can raise an alarm when the groundwater resources are depleting. Mineral exploration, clearly. Telecommunication, as soon as read telecommunication, you understand we are talking about INSAT. We are not talking about IRS, we are talking about INSAT. So 1, 2 and 3 will be there, 4 will not be there. 5 is traffic studies. Now this may seem odd, you are not sure about traffic studies, so you go to the options with the belief that 1, 2 and 3 will be there, 4 will not be there. And if you look at the option, the only possibility is A, 1, 2 and 3 only, which means traffic studies is not a part of the activities of Indian remote sensing. And of course telecommunication is not. The correct option is 1, 2 and 3 only, option A. We go to the third last to the fourth last question, which is an easy question because of the nature of options, right? So tropical wet evergreen forest in which of the above states? Now this is I would say again basic NCERT stuff, and I think if you don't want to do much in geography, all you need to do is have a command on or memorize by heart, remember, scan in your mind, have a photographic memory with regards to NCERT books. Tropical wet evergreen forests, you would know they are not found in Himachal Pradesh. Himachal Pradesh has montane forest, and Arunachal and Mizoram, in that region you find tropical wet evergreen forest. Therefore the answer is C, 1 and 3 only. We go to the third last question. INDARC, INDARC, sometimes seen in the news, and they are right, it is sometimes seen in the news. If you are regular with news, you would have come across INDARC, and you would just recognize it, recognize the correct option. Even if you were not, you can read the options and come to a reasonable conclusion. Now, I would tell you how to guess, how to rationally guess the answers. Now statement C is scientific establishment set up by India in Antarctic region. Statement D is India's underwater observatory to scientifically study the Arctic region. Clearly both Arctic and Antarctic are mentioned. One of these may be the answer. Also look at the name, INDARC, ARC. Antarctic won't qualify, as in you can't substitute ARC for Antarctic, you can substitute it for Arctic, right? So if you have to take a call, you can take it like this. Otherwise I would say in this case you should have remembered this. The answer should be D, which is studying the Arctic, India's underwater observatory. Then this was in news, a lot of celebration happened around this study for the Arctic region. The Arctic region is becoming a hot topic because of the involvement of Russia and the United States. It's supposed to be very rich in oil, and no one wants to be left out there. 99, Forest Carbon Partnership Facility. One question on environment, the kind of question they asked the last year, and 2 other questions they have asked this year. Global partnership of governments, business, civil society and indigenous peoples. Provides financial help to universities, individual scientists and institutions involved in scientific forestry research, right, all this. The third one is RED plus, REDD plus. It helps the countries in their RED plus efforts by providing them this. Now in this case answer is C, 1 and 3. Statement 2 is not correct, though so they are not, this mechanism is to help the countries meet their RED plus targets. It does not get into the funding individuals and the research done by the individual entities. It is on a country level. 1 is correct surely, and therefore option C, although there is a there's a small possibility to maybe, it just depends on how are they identifying this. But if you're talking about the larger objectives, 2 should not be correct and 1 and 3 surely are correct. Therefore, the answer is C, 1 and 3 only, which makes us come to the last question, which would be again a quiz question for let us say a school level quiz question, an easy question because of the nature of the options, and you would have read a few articles in the Hindu with regards to this, right. Recently, which of these languages has been given the classical status? There is a lot of controversy actually about classical status and what is the actual definition of classical status, how old should a language be to be considered for classical status, how rich should the literature be, and all these things. And however, the fact is, in this case it was an easy choice. Oriya has been given classical language status recently, not Konkani, Bhojpuri and Assamese. Answer is A. This completes the discussion for Civil Services Preliminary GS Paper 1, right. And you can look at the details of the program if you want to join our mains program, whether it is classroom program or online. The details will be there on your screen. You can pause the screen and read. We do justice to whatever we do, and we promise you that you will like our programs the way they are. And surely, if you want to keep yourself updated with current affairs, whatever is happening, detailed analysis of current affairs, I forgot to mention there are 3 questions in this year which we have discussed in detail, including Goldilocks zone, in our on our Facebook page there. So you can like us on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/testcracker. Right. And any other doubt, any query, any additional resource you want, you can just drop in a comment and we will be happy to help. We will identify the articles which you need to refer to in order to clarify the doubts. Right. So thank you. Hopefully this was of help to you. I believe I have been quick, but the thing is 100 questions have to be discussed. Details have been given in the slides. Now if you want the slides to be emailed to you, there is a slide which I have used. Just put in your details in the comments page and we will mail the presentation to you. Right. Thank you very much for patiently listening to the entire discussion.